Poetry, provided only that it be properly honoured as but one of the first fruits of the spirit, is always, I imagine, by way of a call to new life, or at any rate to a thinking through afresh of the shape and substance of specifically human being, of what it is fully and unequivocally to be as a creature of discerning and of accountability. Thus, any number of poets, ancient and modern alike, may be said to give pause for thought, to encourage and to sustain a moment of reflection, of turning back upon self with a view to its fresh shaping and substantiation. But just for now, I would like to settle on just one of them, namely the Dante Alighieri, whose death in 1321 is not much upon our minds, as an exemplary instance hereabouts. Exemplary, not least in that his, in what amounts to his own first great work as a poet and philosophical spirit, is, as the title suggests, Vita Nova, a meditation precisely upon what it means to speak of new life, or more exactly of the poetic utterance, in all the carefully considered complexion thereof, to know self in the renewal of self, on the planes both of knowing and of loving. What then is Dante's sense of this? In what sense does poetry in the Vita Nova register and commend as a matter of concern, and indeed of ultimate concern, the call to new life? Well, to speak briefly of a text requiring of the reader rather more than a merely passing review, we may say this: that the Vita Nova has on the face of it to do with Dante's early and continuing celebration of a certain Beatrice, of more or less his own age and living hard by in Florence. Constituting, as it does, a prose commentary on poems written at the time, it registers in retrospect his first sight of her, in all its power to lay hold of him and to possess him in every fibre of his being. And then, in a subsequent moment, her salutation, her actually greeting him, at which point his blessedness, he says, knows no bounds. But in the event, all, alas, goes not according to plan, since in the wake of his attempt to disguise the true object of his love by way of appearing to court another, Beatrice, catching wind of it, withholds her greeting, at which point, and as in truth the deep and abiding substance of his whole undertaking in the Vita Nova, Dante begins to question and to redefine the true nature of love precisely as such. And this as a matter not now of possession, but of praise, not of acquisition, but of disposition. Encountering then in the exquisite 18th chapter of the book a group of Beatrice's companions, Beatrice herself being for the moment nowhere to be seen, Dante draws nigh and asks after their pleasure, whereupon one of the company, sensitive to his misfortune and thus to his discomfiture in Beatrice's presence, inquires of him as to the final cause of his love for her. Since you cannot now abide her presence, she says, what can be the object of your love? A che fine ami tu questa tua donna? The question is worth pausing over, for that, in a nutshell, is what fundamentally the Vita Nova is all about. And indeed, from the earliest of his lyric poems in the neo-courtly tradition of Romance vernacular verse-making, through to the love which moves the sun and the other stars motif with which the Commedia comes to rest, is what Dante himself is all about as a poet and philosopher. What, then, can be the object of your loving? And his reply? Why, to begin with, he says, his entire happiness lay in Beatrice's greeting, her gracious salutation. But now, in the wake of her denial, and upon reflection, it lies in something other than this, in the better part which cannot be taken away, namely in those words which praise my lady, in quelle parole che lodano la donna mia. The narrative is indeed exquisite, as exquisite in conception as it is in expression. But here, as throughout in Dante, the narrative, exquisite as it is obedient to the leading idea, and thus to what actually and ultimately matters about it. For in keeping with the notion of love as praise, that same love, in keeping with the psychology of praise properly understood, is confirmed in its nature and function as a principle of self-transcendence, of knowing and rejoicing in the now more ample substance of self on the planes of seeing, understanding, and desiring. Now, all this notion of love properly understood as making on the part of the lover for a new creation, for a more ample and indeed substantial humanity, needs careful statement. For nothing in Dante, as the poet par excellence in European letters of purgatorial striving, of human being and becoming as a matter of mountainous ascent, comes easily. And neither does it for the poet-lover of the Vita Nova, who, having redefined love as a matter of praise, in again all the rich psychology of this, is even so, and especially given the forlorn event of Beatrice's death, beset by temptation, by the possibility of a surrogate love in the immediacy, the gracious presence thereof. But by way of a fresh vision of Beatrice in glory, and a commitment to speak now of Beatrice as no woman has been spoken of before, the purgatorial gives way to the paradisal, as again but a matter of coming forth on the plane of properly human being, of rejoicing in the status of self as a new creation. And it is with this sense of human being as but a matter of becoming, of emergence on the plane of love understanding, that we come to the poem, to the poetic utterance as registering in all its twofold sacredness and sublimity the call to new life. Just about any of Dante's praised poems in the Vita Nova would do here as exemplary in this respect, but to the fore among them is the sonnet Tanto gentile, tanto onesta pare, justly famous for its celebration both of the Epiphanous presence, Beatrice as indeed the bringer of blessing, and on the part of the poet-lover, the stillness, the self-possession, but with all the exhilaration of knowing self in the now blessed ulteriority of self.
Tanto gentile e tanto onesta pare la donna mia quand'ella altrui saluta, qu'ogni lingua deven tremando muta, e gli occhi non l'ardiscon di guardare. Ella si va, sentendosi laudare, benignamente d'umiltà vestuta, e perché sia una cosa venuta da cielo in terra, a miracol mostrare. Mostrasi sì piacente a chi la mira, che dà per gli occhi una dolcezza al core, che intender non la può chi non la prova. E par che della sua labbia si muova un spirito soave, pien d'amore, che va dicendo all'anima, sospira.
So noble and so pure in heart seems my lady in greeting another, that every tongue a-trembling falls silent, eyes daring not to look upon her. Thus, hearkening unto her praise, she benignly dressed in humility makes her way, seeming as she does so to be but a presence from on high, come from heaven to earth for to make manifest a miracle. So pleasing is she to those who look upon her, that through the eyes she affords sweetness within, and this such that, tasting it not, there can be no knowing of it. And, as but seeming still, from her lips comes forth the spirit sweet and full of love, and whispering as it goes, sigh, my soul. For the connoisseur of technique, there is plenty to be going on with here. Anaphora, epanaphora, synecdoche, and hyperbole, not to mention the sweet configuration of sound and syntax, the deft deployment of the hendecasyllable, and of the sonnet form in the round, as more than equal in its exquisite economy to a complex movement of the spirit, of rejoicing in respect of the world beyond, and of reflection in respect of the world within. But, and this now is what matters, everything here serves the purpose of what Dante himself speaks of as the ditar dentro, or innermost substance of thought and sensation, of self itself as awaiting only the power of the word as the in and through which of its coming about on the plane of properly being as existence, as the in and through which of new life. What, then, by way of conclusion? Well, all sorts of things. Theological, philosophical, psychological, cultural, technical, and hermeneutical, each and every one of them having its part to play in an overall interpretation both of this and of every cherished text. But over and above this is what one of the most accredited of Dante's commentators speaks of as the serietà terribile, or terrifying seriousness of the Dantean lyric, which, along with the aforesaid sacredness of the undertaking, sacred, that is to say, in respect of its functionality at, again, the point of ultimate concern, confirms its commitment in respect of what actually and ultimately matters, of resurrection and new life.